Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Global Coffee Platform Mid-Year Member Update. We're very pleased to have you joining us from all over the world, and we very much look forward to sharing our advances and our goals for the next few months. Our theme today is acting together, and we're going to go through an action-packed, interesting program, and we're going to move very swiftly. We'll be looking at the GCP Call to Action that was issued only a year ago, and since that time, many people have come together with tremendous creative ideas, and we've got a lot of good actions to share and good ideas about how we can continue acting together to bring the call to action to life. So we'll be looking at the call to action. Annette, our executive director, will speak to us on the call to action during COVID-19 times, and then we'll cover what we've done in each of the 4 areas and what we think we can do with focus on acting together. And finally, the chairman of our board, Carlos Brando, will join us for reflections, and we'll be taking questions in the question box as we move through the program that we can address at the end of the program. For housekeeping, we want to make sure that everyone is aware of the competition law policy of the Global Coffee Platform in Europe, which corresponds to the antitrust laws that are executed in the United States. And as participants in the meeting, we're mindful that there shall be no discussion of agreements or prices or any concerted action that might be perceived to restrain competition. We will respect these laws. I also want you to know that the session is being recorded for archival purposes, and also remind you to please use the Q&A box for all of your comments and suggestions going forward, which we'll hope to have time to address at the end of our program. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Annette Pencil, who is going to speak to us about GCP's call to action and how we're working together to answer this call to action in the time of COVID-19 and even beyond. Annette, good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, Mary. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, some of the members who have dialed in more from the Asia side. It's a pleasure to have you here with us in today's webinar. It's quite unprecedented times that we are living through globally with this never-seen pandemic crisis of COVID-19. But actually, isn't it a call to remind us even more to work harder together? You members of the Global Coffee Platform and our country platform partners and many other partners in the sustainability field of the coffee sector, because we've made some steps, important steps, and we will guide you through some of the highlights of the achievements we've been able to do over the past year since the call to action was launched, but there is so much more to be done. So for those who've been with us a year ago, when our board of directors actually brought out and shared with the coffee world GCP's call to action to collectively address the coffee price crisis, a lot has happened on this world. We were amazed to have many of you participating in the membership assembly that took place in October last year in Switzerland. We've also actively participated in several other groups to push forward our joint goals towards a sustainable and thriving coffee sector, but there's quite a way to go. So acting together, which is the theme of today's webinar, to allowing you to scale actually even more the Global Coffee Platform's unique collective organizational power with a feet on the ground in coffee producing countries and up to the roasters and retailers who are part of our membership, gives a good example of reviewing what we've achieved and also hearing from you what your reflections, what your thoughts are on some of the actions that we have proposed to be doing in the next few months, so that next year we can look back and say, hey, despite COVID, we've all been kind of putting even more effort to achieving our shared goals towards sustainability. I invite you now to have a run through these collective action areas. We have 4 of them. And let's start right away with the first action area. And I pass the baton back to Mary, who is going to briefly update us on what has happened to exchange, to encourage and talk to the international coffee exchanges. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Aneta. We thought that the first action area, engaging international coffee exchanges, is critically important because we want to make sure that all actors in the coffee sector have information about how electronic price discovery works and how we can help all of the actors in the sector use it to manage risk. One of the important things that we did last year with collaboration with our member ICE Futures US was to co-host a webinar, which was very well attended and well received. And in that webinar, Dave Farrell, the Chief Operating Officer, and Tim Barry, the Vice President of Operations, shared with us how electronic price discovery works in the modern world, shared with us some aspects of the history of ICE, and we encourage all of you to download this webinar if you haven't seen it yet. It's an hour. And comments that I had from members and partners were that they'd really never had such a great synopsis of how the markets work, and it was a great opportunity. If you have people in your organization who you think could benefit from this webinar, we encourage you to take advantage of this GCP resource. And I also want to thank ICE for their collaboration and cooperation to work with us to make it happen. This is a great example of what we can do to bring information and help cultivate knowledge through the sector about how price discovery works, a fundamental challenge that we all need to master. The second item about what we can do, we've been thinking and talking in the organization with many of our partner and members, and the idea has emerged that it could be great to set up a GCP working group of experts who are well-versed and experienced in the area of price discovery. And in this expert group, we would be discussing questions about how we can make the electronic price discovery tool more useful and beneficial to the actual trading and risk management that producers and exporters and importers and roasters and traders all over the world constantly engage in. There have been some concerns about algorithmic trading and black box trading and speculative trading having undue influence in the market. It would be very interesting to sit around a table together, explore the data behind that, and find out what influences those algorithmic trading activities do have, and also to ask ourselves specific questions about how can we work together to enhance the utility of coffee futures and options to serve producers and their families better, and even to help bring more knowledge about how these risk management tools work. Risk management is a core challenge that we all want to learn more about and be able to work together to help mitigate issues as they come up and spread knowledge throughout the sector to help everyone, especially those who don't have as much knowledge but need it.
Thank you, Mary. And you see Marcelo Burriti on the picture here. This was planned to be introduced, of course, by Marcelo, who couldn't make it today, but we have captured a short exchange between Mary and Marcelo earlier this week so that we can get the perspective of one of our roaster members here, also board directors. As you have seen in the call to action, engaging roasters and retailers to actually commit to more sustainably sourced coffee, to higher volumes of that, and to expanding also perhaps the definition of sustainable sourcing is one key area where our members have told us we need to do something. We are very happy to report back to you, next slide please, that some of those suggestions that have been put forward a year ago already in March, and marching well, the first reporting on sustainable purchase, so purchase of sustainable coffee has been done, and we have Andreas very shortly explaining a bit more of the background to that. We have also been starting to explore definitions of sustainable coffee together with several of our members and our technical committee. And then there is an ongoing work to encourage and to also publicize increasing sustainable sourcing commitments to make, help make coffee the first sustainable commodity by 2030, which is one of our shared goals we also have with other sector groups. To stop now at this point. I would like to invite Andreas to show us the brief remarks from Marcelo, and then pass directly on to Andreas to share a bit more of the nuts and bolts of having done the first sustainable purchase reporting with several of our members.
So a big piece of any action related to coffee or sustainability in general is the existence of demand, of a growing demand for it. That is a big piece of what makes things work, and it provides the clearest indication for the market participants, be them farmers, be them cooperatives, exporters, traders, even consumers, actually, that there is a need to do things better. There is a certainty of market placement, and it underpins the investments that are required in sustainability, which are by nature medium to long term.
Building on this crucial theme, what are some of the fundamental aspects of the GCP opportunity for roasters and retailers to report their sustainable purchases that attract you to participate in this?
The first point is that we in Nestle have done a lot of work on this, on increasing our the volume of coffee that we call responsibly sourced, and we're very proud of it. It is there is a lot more to be done, that for sure, but we're very proud of what we have achieved, and we have seen, now that we are pretty much 10 years in our sustainability program, that certainty of demand and that let's call it direction, that we provided for the market, that signal that we provided for the market in terms of sustainable demand for sustainable coffee, played a big role in what the sector is today. So in that sense, the attractiveness for us is, first of all, to give more visibility of where we are. I'm not saying that we are where we want to be. There is still a lot to be done, but also to stimulate some of our competitors, other roasters, be them small, medium, large, it doesn't matter, to get into this journey of sustainability. A lot of them have done a lot of good work as well, and I think it is a good thing to give visibility of all this.
Okay, and I'm trying to give you a little overview of what we have done to address the GCP roaster and retailer reporting of sustainable purchases. So on really technical side, we used our GCP progress reporting tool, and we adapted it to gather the information, as you can see here on the screen under point 1, which is basically the total volumes of green coffee received during a business year. And then on top of that, the sub-proportions of sustainably purchased green coffee per sourcing country. Sustainably purchased green coffee always, according to the GCP baseline recognition, the status of the year 2019, basically. I want to give you a quick explanation of the difference between the requested very detailed information, which some might even consider as being confidential information, which is clearly understandable, versus the publication of the aggregated data. So we need, for a certain kind of data quality and confidential credibility of the data, we need a certain kind of detail level of the actual information the roasters and retailers are providing to us. But then in the end, according to the antitrust regulations as well, but also according to the agreements with our members, we are basically sharing an aggregated level of information to ensure that the data still remains, you know, confidential in a way, and you will not be harmed by any, you know, publication we are doing. So from that first phase, thanks to the great participation of our roasters, we have a lot of learnings, mainly on the technical side. We will share with you the actual learnings from the report, from the details with the next iteration phase that Annette will introduce as well. But the main learnings from a technical perspective are we have to work on the data quality a little bit more. And what we also want to achieve in the next phase is to implement this reporting as a usual process, as a regular process into the actual business, into the yearly business between GCP and the members. So as a next step, we will also try and gain more clarity on the actual requirements for the next operative reporting phase. And we will basically also get back to some of you with some questions around this when it comes to data. Oh, sorry. This is basically what we did and what we are going to do. So part 3 is what we are going to do in the near future after sharing the public summary. Annette will give you some words on this as well. With that, I would also like to invite you, if you want to learn a bit more about how we measure and how we work with the data, I would like to invite you to participate in the webinar on GCP measurement in action in August. We will show you the data at the end of this session. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Andreas. That was a nice inside look into what was necessary to actually get rolling. Next slide, please. On getting rolling on one of the action items that were included in the call to action in terms of encouraging roasters and retailers amongst our membership to become active and contribute to addressing the coffee price crisis. So what else can we do? What will we do from a GCP side? And what could we do together with others, amongst of them our members, so you or partners of us as well. So let's look at what will happen in the next step. As Andreas has already said, the reporting on the purchase of sustainable coffee, the first round of reporting has been done on 2018 figures. It's been quite an interesting exercise to bring this data together. And please do watch out for the first insight summary report, which we are going to publish next month. And at that point, I wanted to actually really applaud the exemplary leadership of those roasters and retailers amongst our membership who've been putting their ball into the court and their head into the court in terms of showing transparency, contributing to market transparency, contributing to that visibility that Marcelo, for instance, has been mentioning. And we plan to do this on an annual basis. So we are already preparing for the next round of GCP roaster and retailer reporting on sustainable purchase. And for doing that, as was recommended, the GCP Technical Committee is currently revising the mechanism for GCP recognition of potentially other additional sustainability schemes for future reporting rounds. That's a lot of exciting work that is happening as we speak. And please, members, do stay informed here. We will keep you absolutely informed on the developments of this exciting path. And we'll definitely share more during our upcoming membership assembly, which will also take place virtually. What also is already starting to get moving, connected to the topic of reporting and bringing more transparency in our sector on purchase of sustainable coffee, is the revision of the baseline coffee code, which is used as a reference for that recognition. We are planning this at the moment. We're planning to do that with broad stakeholder input, and the technical committee will be supported also by a broader advisory task force that is supposed to be starting its work in August, September this year. Further information to be shared very shortly with you as well. And then, as I said before, there's a lot of good work already there, but there's a huge possibility to encourage more roasters and retailers to actually also contribute to increasing the sourcing, but also then to provide sustainable, like more insight into sustainability sourcing information. And in that context, we would like to encourage all of you to also upload your sustainability sourcing commitments or other sustainability commitments in Sustainable Coffee Challenge Commitment Hub, which is complementary to the more detailed work that we are doing on reporting on one of those indicators. Having said that, I'd like to actually go back, give the baton back to Mary to guide us into the next section of the program. Mary?
I want to encourage everyone as we move through the program to please send your comments and your questions and your ideas to us through the Q&A box. And we'll look forward to addressing those at the end of the program. And if for some reason we're not able to address everything, we will certainly get back to you bilaterally. So this input is important. I'm really happy to see so many people joining us today because the GCP is a great community. We're a unique organization of people dedicated to the advancement of sustainability. It's an association unlike the sector has ever seen. And we're working hard together and we're moving forward and we're creating new ideas, incubating them and making great impact. So with that said, we've just talked about our call to action theme number 2, encouraging roasters and retailers to increase sustainable purchasing. And now we'd like to move to a very important theme, action area 3, which is activating stakeholders in producing countries. And to speak to us on this, and then to hear from our Secretariat contributors and also very important, our country platform contributors, I'd like to introduce Devon Ordos, GCP board member and president of the Colombian Coffee Association. Juan, take it away.
So thank you everyone. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. It's a pleasure and honor to be here as not just as Colombian Coffee Federation, but also as board member. A quick context on the situation is we need to remember that COVID-19 has deepened some of the challenges that the coffee value chain faces and has created some new challenges that we need to deal with. However, the structural challenges that the coffee value chain faces and has been facing for many years now are still there. Of which the biggest is the deep imbalance between the different links of the coffee value chain. So that's in itself one of the thing we should be looking at, how to make the value chain, especially on the producer side, the economically sustainable. And this is a work that we need to do in a manner, as Annette well put it, and Mary, in a matter of under the principle of co-responsibility. Everybody has to be working in a collective action to make sure that happens and that the value chain and we keep the value chain. How do we do it? I mean, we all know, all of us attending here, the GCP has the country platforms. Those are very powerful tools that can be used for many purposes to work for the value chain and work for the coffee farmers. Of course, as you can imagine, I have a strong bias on going towards the coffee farmers, and I think that this is a very valuable tool. One is it's very important for this collective action to work, that we activate the stakeholders in producing countries, not just in the industry, but also in producing countries. I'm not just talking about the usual suspect, the producers and the NGOs and the coffee industry and the processing industry. So also there has to be an engagement with governments, because part of what happens here is related to coffee economic policy. And that has to really be focused on economic viability. That has to be the first and main task that we look at and that we try to keep. how do we do it? It's not just about discussing prices, and I agree that prices in the exchange do not reflect the physical coffee, do not reflect the market, but also we need to work on the producing side, and that's where GCP also can do good work in putting all the pieces together, in working with all the stakeholders to make sure that collectively we can do some work. For instance, we need to, in many countries, it's not clear what the costs of production are. The platforms and GCP can help help study that and create the base for which we understand better how production is, what the cost of production, what the efficiency in the farm productivity, and so on, is how it is developed in a certain country. And based on that, you can work on the economic viability points that you need to develop to make sure that it really happens. So I believe that in a nutshell, that at this point, and we're going to hear from the panelists, at this point, the role of GCP is key. The role of all I keep saying on the board that the GCP has to be the place where everybody comes to discuss in a neutral manner how to make the coffee value chain sustainable, and especially the coffee farmers sustainable. So this is the point where, with collective action, not losing the focus because of COVID-19, but focusing on the medium and long-term situation of the coffee value chain. This is the point where GCP can play a key role to make all these things happen, taking advantage, what can I say it so, of the current crisis, which is for the moment our biggest. What everybody's talking about, but we cannot forget the structural part of this, just by dealing because we're dealing with the current pandemic. So I think the GCP needs to be. We need to support GCP on working on putting together stakeholders and make sure that we focus on economic viability of the farmers, economic viability of the whole chain in the end, for the medium and long term, and that can be achieved through the national platforms and in the countries by sitting all the stakeholders at the table at the same time.
Devon, thank you very much. That is a fantastic introduction to this key theme, activating stakeholders in producing countries. And now I'd like to pass the program to GCP Program Director Caroline Glauca, who is going to talk to us about collective action initiatives and what we're doing. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, a beautiful way of activating stakeholders for and in producing countries are GCP's collective action initiatives, where GCP members and also invited non-members are participating to address difficult issues at origin. I would like to share with you a little bit or explain the context of these initiatives, where they sit within a country, starting off with a national sustainability curriculum, which is a set of good agricultural practices for production. They exist in many countries, and a few of the countries have already taken them further by developing indicators. So at farm level, it can be measured how they are actually being adopted and practiced. With these data, the analysis can show how progress is being achieved and made, but it can also show critical areas where gaps can be identified, what is not going so well. These gaps then often are bigger issues, which we call systemic, that are being addressed with improvement initiatives, which we call collective action initiatives. We have recently renamed them from member initiatives. These collective action initiatives are usually running for a few years, and the learnings that are being taken from them are then being reintegrated into the national sustainability curriculum, which is updated and continuously made better. So they are part of a continuous improvement process, and we have already quite a few two actually finished and a few going on. One is about to finish this year in Uganda, which is working on improving the extension services in Uganda. The other one in Brazil, which is addressing the responsible use of agrochemicals in Brazil, is already, I think, in the second year. It's still open for contributing. And the other two one is in Vietnam, the responsible use of agro inputs, and next, the Brazilian one, social well-being, which is about to start. And these two I will want to share a bit more detail with you. So the social well-being initiative, collective action initiative in Brazil, is in partnership with Secafe and Impacto. And the key areas that it is addressing is improving the living and working conditions of coffee growers and workers, and creating awareness about the degrading working conditions. It also aims to continuously eliminate any unacceptable labor conditions. In this initiative is also included a mapping on living income. So Juan Esteban mentioned we need to look more at the economic viability of farmers. So a step with this initiative will be made here as well. It's running for 4 years. It's about to be launched. We're having very good discussions and verbal commitments already from contributors here. So next, please come join and improve the social well-being in Brazil and make it happen. Next is in Vietnam, which has started this month. It's the responsible use of agro inputs, which is focusing on testing alternatives of pesticides, especially the focus is here on glyphosate. It's also disseminating best weed management practices to farmers, and ideally with that also improving their cost situation as they more efficiently use agro inputs. But this initiative, as I mentioned, goes further. It will also give policy recommendations to the government, who owns the national sustainability curriculum in the case of Vietnam, and improve that area as well. The initiative will also have the advantage to meet regulatory requirements that exist in many coffee destination or countries. So in the EU and the US, for example, there are defined maximum residue levels for pesticides, and this will ensure also that these are met and not exceeded, as sometimes is the problem. This initiative is already supported by JDE, Chibo, Nestle, and IDH. They have committed, it's happening, we started, but please be invited, come and join and make this initiative happen. And in the next presentation, find your logo here as well. Contact us. We're ready to talk to you and discuss. Look a little bit into the value collective action initiatives bring. One is really on the sector level, where it improves an issue, but it also brings a lot of value for companies and organizations that contribute. So often here, as I mentioned before, it's addressing a systemic issue, and these are bigger issues which are hard to address in a traditional supply chain project. It's hard to address these big issues by one or two organizations. So coming together collectively, a bigger scope and scale can be achieved with sector impact. These initiatives are aligned with country platforms and their sustainability priorities, and also local initiatives. So the topics just not come up as we think fit. I mentioned before that they are based on research, on results from data collection and analysis, and as the countries set their priorities. Value is also that you raise the effectiveness of your resources as many members come together and put their resources together, and thus a bigger project can be put together. We also avoid duplication as we also see what is already going on in a country. And thus, in general and overall, sustainability resources can be used more effectively. Working together, you reduce risk. These topics are often very delicate, very critical. They're hard topics to work on. Labor conditions in Brazil, agro inputs in Vietnam, for example. So more people see more, and working together then is sharing that risk as well, or potential risk. Another advantage for some companies, organizations will be that GCP manages these collective action initiatives. They are lean, but not mean, but most of the money then goes into the field work and not in the covering overheads. So with you, it's really contributing, giving input, but you don't need to project manage. That lies with GCP. The beauty of these initiatives are also expanding your sustainability knowledge by working closely with GCP together. So you will be diving into certain topics at origin and getting to know that very well. Also, these initiatives, with them you can show that you do field level work and have field level impact with the harvested results of these initiatives. So it's also showing that you're not refraining from addressing critical issues, but working on them to improve them. Another advantageous point is that complying with existing and upcoming regulations. If we think about the existing, for example, in the UK and US anti-slavery acts, or the maximum residue levels that have been defined, for example, for pesticides in the EU or US that are being met, or the developments also in Europe and especially Germany here on supply chain legislation that is upcoming. These initiatives will help to meet these regulations as well. And last but not least, GCP gives you visibility in the coffee sector by showing your contributions, your logo in events like the World of Coffee or AFCA, in webinars as the one today, for example, or the coffee field days we have done before, in the GCP member, the Espresso, our newsletter. And we do many presentations where we talk about these initiatives because they attract more and more attention in the sector. The results can then also be, of course, a source for your communications to talk and write about certain topics. Yeah, that's really collective action initiatives. The value of these initiatives, of collective action initiatives, really comes from acting together. That's where they draw their value from, and that makes them strong with and for you. And with that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Pedro Ronca. I think next we're flying over now to the origins to hear what has been happening there. Pedro, please.
Sure. Thank you, Caroline. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, everyone. Welcome to Brazil for a quick, some quick words. Well, first, Brazil, we have been working since 2013 on our platform, so it's really active and mature, running more than 40 members, national and international ones in Brazil, with a strong governance structure operating. And by doing that, we know that economic viability of coffee is a challenge, and we know that most of Brazilian growers do use agrochemicals and inputs to reach the productivity level that makes our coffee so strong and many times economic viable. not always, but many times. And for that reason, we selected responsible use of agrochemical as a key topic to work on, considering the long-term approach to have improvement on this issue. That's how we managed to group more than 11 funding partners and 10 implementing partners on a multi-stakeholder approach, as Caroline just mentioned, and gather together $1.8 million to put this initiative together on a 5-year strategy that have trained more than 700 farmers in year 1, aiming for more, looking for new solutions, especially the ones to promote behavior change in smallholders. That's not easy at all. And we have been finding new methodologies that we are using on this initiative to promote the adoption of the agricultural best practices, and also including the glyphosate issue as another issue that we are promoting it broadly here as solutions for the long-term sustainability of coffee production in Brazil. To complement that and invite you all, as Caroline just presented, the initiative on social well-being in partnership with both Impacto and Secafé. It's about to be launched soon, open for anyone that is interested. Please reach out to us if you are. But that's another very important topic that we need to address on improving working conditions in the production sector, and also looking for the success cases that we do find that are here and eliminate the degrading working conditions that also are here, but we need to address them. So that's why we are partnering with Impacto to get the vulnerability index for coffee as a tool to be used together with the GCP tools for continuous improvement. That includes the curriculum, the app, the internal management system, and this whole set of tools that support our members on the development of sustainability in the long term. So we are very excited with these two initiatives, sharing, learning, success, failures. That's also important to continually build a view for the long-term sustainability of Brazil's production.
Pedro, thank you. That is a great look at what has been accomplished and what the Brazil platform plans to do. We're really giving out highlights today, and it's very exciting news. We were going to be flying to Ethiopia, but the flight was diverted. So instead, we have just flown to Stamford, Connecticut, where I am sitting, and I'm going to do my best to present the slide for Dr. Chala Erko, who is our country coordinator in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian platform is just emerging, just developing, so it's in a very exciting time. It's a wonderful opportunity for GCP to help connect sustainability stakeholders and help develop a national sustainability curricula and create engagement opportunities for people to rally around, identify ideas, discuss them, and make plans going forward. One of the key things that we are looking at is an economic viability study in Ethiopia, hearkening back to what Devon mentioned about looking at costs of production, so that we can get a better handle on what that is and use that data to make plans. We're also very excited about the opportunity for the emerging platform to perform a key role to enable learning and exchange between stakeholders in other platforms, particularly the Brazil and Indonesian teams. It's very important for people to be able to see how others are working in other areas and adapt those ideas and opportunities to work in their own origins. And we're also very keen on helping GCP members in Ethiopia connect with each other more effectively via virtual meetings, focusing on issues that are important to them, and using this tool to come around and really focus on making forward plans. So we really appreciate all of the efforts of Dr. Chala in Ethiopia and all of the efforts of our GCP Ethiopian members and stakeholders and partners. And thank you for this opportunity to try to fill in for Dr. Chala. So now we're going to fly to Honduras, and I'd like to introduce Guillermo Alvarez to tell us what's going on in Honduras. Thank you, Guillermo.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all Global Coffee Platform members. I am Guillermo Alvarado, the Country Program Manager for GCP Honduras and the Secretary of the Honduras Sustainable Coffee Platform. This past season, 2019-2020, the Honduran coffee sector has gone through tough times, especially due to climate effects that has adversely impacted on yields. Total production and exports have dropped significantly. Nevertheless, the Honduran platform is among the youngest, and in addition, we went through a period of slow activity at the end of 2019 that we have reactivated in 2020, even under the COVID lockdown restrictions. It has a resilient, hardworking, and enthusiastic membership, especially in the coordinating committee, that have continued to work under this lockdown restrictions. For the remaining of the year, we have set the conditions to deliver. First, the National Sustainability Curriculum, which is a fundamental tool to promote sustainable coffee production, especially among small and medium farmers. Being one of the youngest platforms, we are receiving very useful orientation from other country platforms, especially Brazil. In addition, and in collaboration with Solidaridad, Rainforest Alliance, UTZ, and the National Honduran University, and the Colombian coffee platform, we are developing a website to enhance communication for the cause of sustainable coffee in the Honduran platform. And also we're developing an e-learning platform to facilitate scaling of technology and lessons learned from national and international experiences to enhance sustainable coffee in the country. Also, we have been processing information and data to identify how to deal with the countrywide pressing issues for sustainable coffee in Honduras that have been previously identified under the platform members and aiming to develop a collective action initiative. Thanks for your support in assisting the Honduran coffee industry to get closer to the dream of a countrywide sustainable coffee sector.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. And we are now going to get back on track with our airplane flying to Indonesia, and I'd like to call Paramita Mentari to the floor. Paramita, thank you.
Hi, Mary, thank you. And hi, this is already evening in Indonesia. Hello, everyone. So in Indonesia, we've been established since 2015. So I'd like to thank you for all of your support to support sustainable coffee production in Indonesia. We have been outreaching and trained 190 master trainers and about 23,000 farmers. So towards the future, we would like to bring more relevance in communicating about sustainable coffee productivity and production with a wider audience, especially the youth and in the coffee community in the local scene. So in terms of that, we also have been outreaching them through some activities called DISCO. It stands for Diskusi Kopi or Coffee Discussion in Bahasa. So in April, we started with having it virtually with a topic called Anticipating COVID-19 Impacts on the Coffee Sector Supply Chain. because this is a follow-up from a survey conducted from our master trainers, farmers, and members with 117 respondents at the end of the March. And from that survey, we obtained information that about 70% of the SMEs do not have clear information about the local government support in terms of COVID-19 impact, support to cooperatives and coffee farmers as well. So from the survey itself, we gathered information that most of the farmers as well as the SMEs, they expect direct capital financing instead of medical equipment and so on from the government. And apparently, although there are informations and strategies developed by the central government, but the information distribution were not clear. And through this DISCO, we were able to communicate this to the ministers ministers representative who attended the discussion, and it was followed up with another series of discussions which it is more focused, and it becomes a suggestions and recommendations of follow-up plans during the presidential meeting, which is we're very lucky to have. And then also as a follow-up, because of they feel the need of clearer information, we started the initiative of developing a landing page on the website, which compiled coffee related question and answers. And during this week, I would like to invite you to the Indonesia Sustainable Coffee Forum 2020. Tomorrow will be the last day. It will be live on YouTube in Scopy's YouTube channel. So towards also upcoming activities and opportunities to engage, we would like to develop measurement indicators in 2021, and we also would like to continue the master trainings program. So we also believe that having this kind of approach, we can instill more awareness in sustainable coffee, so that this issue will not only belong to those who already know, and in the although in the upstream and the downstream side of the supply chain, but also belongs to a wider community. So thank you. That's all from me, Mary.
Thank you, Mentari. That's all good news. Let's go to Kenya now and visit with our platform manager, George Watin. George?
Thank you very much, Mary, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, and good night to all of you. So Kenya, we've been grateful, to have had a chance and a forum over the last 2 years to put ourselves together and really work on different things. And we, at the very beginning of our existence, thought it was quite important that one, all the things that we do are evidence-based, and two, the fact that economic viability of Kenyan coffee farmers is quite high on the radar. And so one of our first activities was really to come up with an economic viability of coffee farming for Kenyans, and this brought out a couple of issues, and key among them because Kenyan farmers tend to be very organized in cooperative groups, was the issue of efficiency in these systems through which farmers use to get their coffee on this area. And for this particular one, we've partnered with the government, to facilitate KPI reporting for cooperatives to what the government has put together, being called as the Cooperative Data Management System. And the idea here is really to ensure that we are promoting more and more efficiency on these vehicles that farmers use, to try and produce what I might say, and with lack of any fear or favor, some of the best and premium coffees in the world. So this activity has helped us, in trying to see what areas we can try to improve on their efficiency, but also help the cooperatives to compare with each other and benchmark, but also learn and so on. And in the future, of course, we are continuing with this work on the economic viability of farmers. So currently, we are working on the cost of processing, because we realize that is one of the areas that we need, of course, to try and get better at, but also, get closer to some of the ones in the world that are more efficient. And this is going to happen all the way until August. And last but not least, in terms of communicating amongst ourselves, we are also, as a platform, trying to bring people together to discuss issues. And tomorrow morning, we have a forum such as this, but it's only open to Kenyans. So we have an online breakfast tomorrow, to discuss about the things, the challenges that people are having, especially during this COVID period. And now, unfortunately, because I don't think we have flights out of Kenya, I'll give it back to Mary. I don't know how we are going to get to Uganda. Thank you.
It's magic. It's magic. Thank you very much, George. I love the idea of power breakfast. That's the way to start the day. And now I would like to welcome Samson Ermang, our country coordinator in Uganda. Hi, Samson.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Great.
All right. Good evening to everyone from Uganda. My name is Samson Ermang, and the fundamental principle of any platform is to be able to, whether nationally or globally, is to be able to meet and convene to discuss issues that put you in a position to address key challenges that are affecting the coffee sector. Now, in Uganda, that's a principle that we live by and understand its importance, and it's undisputedly very effective. So we have been blessed as a country that there's a lot of private interest in the coffee sector. And one of the things we can do to continue encouraging that private sector interest and investment is by ensuring they have an enabling environment. And that discussion starts with being able to ensure that the policies that are put forward by government are enabling for them. Now, in the country, we've been having two key policies that needed a lot of discussion. It was a good start because we believe that policies are a very good step in improving a sector like Uganda. But one of the things that we wanted was that to ensure that the private sector and government have compromised in a way that when you decide to invest in the coffee business in Uganda, you're happy, everything is economically viable, as well as ensuring that farmers, whatever policies are put out there, makes them economically viable and interested in growing coffee. In terms of activities and opportunities to engage in moving forward in Uganda, one of the things we have become very interested in is the National Sustainability Curriculum based on GCP tool. And the reason is because we have a lot of extension materials in Uganda. When you come to the sector, you would know how to grow coffee in Uganda. But one of the things we thought that the National Sustainability Curriculum can do for our coffee sector is that it can improve on the image of Ugandan coffee and improve on the branding of it based on the principles and the different facets of sustainability. At this point, we have had a few meetings and we're in the final stages of finalizing the National Sustainability Curriculum, and it has generated a lot of interest from different stakeholders, and we're looking forward to rolling it out in the coffee sector. And one of the things we can encourage you, those who have particular interest in Uganda, is to encourage especially private sector to roll out the National Sustainability Curriculum so that we can be able to speak with one voice and across the value chain. And we believe that this is the vehicle that will get us there.
Samson, thank you very much. And we've been proceeding through our country platform colleagues alphabetically. So last but certainly not least is my colleague Trung Pham Quang to tell us what's going on with the Vietnam platform. Hi, Trung.
Hi, thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone from Vietnam. My name is Trung. I'm a program manager for GCP in Vietnam, and it's very good pleasure for us to share our highlight of what GCP Vietnam have been working so far to all of you in this the member update 2020. For this, we want to focus on two main things that we have really focused our resources on. The very first thing that regarding the GCP Progress Tool, we have been conducting the data collection in Vietnam over the past 2 years, and recently we did the data collection in Krông Nang district in the central highland of Vietnam from late 2019 and to early 2020. Over that period, we have collected data from more than 6,000 households with own indicator regarding the household well-being and social indicator, and also the coffee sustainability indicator as well. And based on that, we have a database of the coffee producers in the district, which is very important in order to have a for the measure of the changes over the time periods. In addition, it's also very useful for various coffee actors in order to have them in their planning and also in their decision-making process. To do that, we have been engaging and encourage various coffee stakeholders to participate in. We're working with the public sector, with the governments over there, and also with the private sector. Specifically in this case, we're working with Simico companies. This is one of the big coffee trader in Vietnam, in order to do the survey. And follow that, we organize a data sharing workshop in early June, where we have gathered over 50 different stakeholders, combining from the public sector, private sector, civil organization, development programs, so on, in order to share the result of our data, and also the analysis of that. Based on that, we are calling for other stakeholders to engage in our data collection in other provinces, in other districts as well. Another thing that is really flagship program that we are working on, and actually we just launched on the 1st June this year. This is the Collective Action Initiative on the responsible use of agro inputs. For that, it has been designed comprehensively, including two main components. The first one focus on the applied field research, in which that we're going to do the research, surveys, field testing, field trial, and other activity in the field. And based on the result, based on the lesson from that, we we're going to bring it up to the government level in order to work on the policy development activity, and also other communication activities in order to improve the awareness of the stakeholder in the responsible use of pesticide, particularly the glyphosate issue. For that, we have been engaging many stakeholders, including the key organizations like IDH, or the big roster like Nestle, ZDE, Tibor, and also the public sector, that is including the Department of Plant Protection, Department of Crop Production, and Vietnam Coffee Coordination Board. And the target from this project that we want to target at least 200,000 coffee farmers in the Central Highland of Vietnam. So, if you are interested in this, if you want to have more information regarding this initiative, so we are very happy to share with you. And we also welcome any question from all of you. Thank you very much, and we are looking forward to the collaboration and your participation into our initiative in Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trung, and thank you all of our country platform speakers today. There is just so much going on, much more than we could possibly share, but we think that these highlights, we hope, have helped you see how we're moving forward with the call to action, how there are great ideas and actions and impacts that are being generated, and that now is the time to keep our collective foot on the accelerator. So with that, I would like to pass the program to my colleague, Melissa Salazar, who is the GCP Country Programs Manager. She's speaking to us today from Costa Rica. Hi.
Hi, Mary. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. And thank you, Mary, for the introduction. And also thank you to all of the platform coordinators for sharing with all of us some of your highlights, upcoming activities, and also opportunities for the members to engage. So today, relating to the topic of activating stakeholders in producing countries, I just want to give you two brief updates on two recent developments that pertain to the country platforms. The first update I would like to speak about today is the GCP Bulletin on COVID-19. Some of you might already be familiar with it because you have received it on your inbox, but some of you might not. So if you have received three editions of the GCP COVID-19 Bulletin, which started going out in April. This bulletin collects resources from the 11 countries where the national coffee platforms are located, and they provide resources and links to official national and regional guidelines and protocols around the situation, but also to news sources that we deem relevant to our members. This bulletin is done thanks to the efforts and work of all of the platform coordinators. However, because a lot of the guidelines and protocols at the national level are already in place, we will continue with the bulletin, but instead of it going out bi-weekly as it has, every twice a month as it has so far, it will go out at the end of the month with the GCP Espresso. Our goal with this bulletin is to provide our members with easy accessible information and point them in the direction of accurate national information. If you're not receiving the bulletin yet and you're interested, just subscribe to our Espresso list, and that should allow you to get the bulletin on your mailbox every month. The other update that I want to share with you is related to the country platform learning and exchange program. So many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the annual country congress, which happens in the same week as our member assembly. During this country congress, we bring together platform coordinators and representatives, as well as GCP board members, GCP secretariat staff, and other key stakeholders in the coffee sector to exchange on best practices and learnings in an open and neutral space where people feel free to discuss challenges as well as opportunities. Because of the success of this program, of course, we plan to continue this in the future, but we have also decided with the platform coordinators to increase the learning and exchange opportunities between the countries. Based on this and on discussions with the coordinators, we are now starting quarterly virtual learning and exchange sessions on key topics and open to all of the platform coordinators. And at the same time, we are also having smaller group discussions on learning and exchange based on key topics. Our goal is not only for the platforms to have that open and free space to discuss, but also for them to be able to take back the learnings to their local memberships, discuss it with them, and see how they can apply it in their context. We're very excited about this. The next quarterly session is actually on July 7th on the National Sustainability Curriculum, and hopefully by the end of the year, during our member assembly, we can share more with you about this. Thank you so much, and now I hand over to Annette.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you all country colleagues. That was quite a nice ride through some of the highlights that everybody has been working on together with you, our members, with the country platforms and the important local stakeholders, including the governments. So we are rolling, yeah. We don't let COVID hold us back. There is yet another fourth action area that we would briefly like to invite you to hear some highlights of achievements and of progress, and then also think along together with us what else could we do. The one action area that I'm talking about is basically looking at mobilizing government agencies, civil society, the broader private sector, and other interested and necessary stakeholders to achieve our shared vision of sustainable and thriving coffee sector, and also address the current and persisting low coffee price crisis, which now has, of course, been overlaid by COVID concerns. So what has been done, and I wanted to mention and recognize great work that some of our GCP members have been doing, particularly on the living income in the economic viability area. IDH has been putting out a very good report on from the Living Income Task Force, which is available, which we can also make available to you members. again, so that you can review that. Some of those recommendations GCP and the country platforms are already working on, but we definitely need much more work around economic viability and living income. So more to come. I also wanted to mention the SCA, the Specialty Coffee Association, who has been working the entire last year on the price risk response initiative and has also produced a very comprehensive report shared earlier this year with very good recommendations also to add value and the role that the specialty coffee sector can and will and should be playing also going forward in providing alternative sources of income in a more forward-looking and more economically viable way to coffee farming communities everywhere in the world. What the Sustainable Coffee Challenge has done is an excellent first report on the Commitment Hub that was mentioned before. And of course, I shouldn't forget to mention the appreciation that we as Global Coffee Platform have to all our strategic co-funding partners, especially BMZ and the German Development Corporation and GIZ, Rainforest Alliance, and since the start, IDH, who have been working together with us and enabling us to work with the country platforms to advance on several lines that some of the highlights you've been hearing now this afternoon, this morning, this evening for you. The collective action initiatives that Caroline has been elaborating on is a very concrete example of the design of innovative solutions to fund sustainability in our sector. But there's definitely need for more. So we shouldn't kind of lean back and think that is all enough, but rather think what can we do more. And at that point, I would like to invite you to have a different perspective of one of our strategic partners, the International Coffee Organization. And I'm very happy to have the Executive Director, José Sete, with us in this call today to give you a different perspective from a governmental organization in terms of how has the collaboration between GCP and ICO been looking like and what is there to come in the next couple of days, months, and years. The floor is yours, José. Please do share your perspectives with our membership.
Well, I'd just like to say that the memorandum of understanding the ICO has with GCP is very dear to my heart, especially since it was the first one I signed after becoming executive director here at the ICO. So I'm very pleased with our collaboration so far and to share the best practices developed by the GCP with the wider ICO membership. We have a special interest in our partnership in this ongoing Delta project, which seeks to create a measurable definition of sustainability indicators. We all know that sustainability is everybody's goal, but it needs to be defined and measured. And we are confident that the Delta project is an important step in this direction. Now, let me talk about the main focus of our work at the ICO in the recent past, which has been the sector-wide dialogue. And the objective of this dialogue is to find ways in which to make the world coffee sector sustainable. And it started with 5 consultative events during last year. The GCP participated in several of these. It culminated in the first CEO and Global Leaders Forum in September, which in turn resulted in the London Declaration, which is a declaration on the part of the private sector to work collectively to overcome some of these sustainability challenges we have been talking about today. I'm really pleased that the GCP is I call it a special partner in this dialogue. Why is it so special? Because of the quality of the work already done and also the breadth of your membership and the wide penetration in the private sector. All of this makes GCP an ideal partner for the ICO, which in turn brings in the public sector. Our membership, the governments represent about 99% of world coffee production and 66% of consumption. Now, what are the next steps in the dialogue? This is the creation of a public-private task force with 32 members. 50% are from the public sector and the other 50% from the private sector. I'm glad to say that the GCP is one of these private, we call them Sherpas, the representatives on the task force. The work of the task force has not progressed as rapidly as we would like because of COVID-19. We attach a great importance to physical meetings and in-person interaction to move the task force forward. But unfortunately, this is not possible at the present time. So the decision has been taken to have the first meeting of the task force occur virtually, and it will take place on Tuesday of next week. So it's a good coincidence here that we're here today. I'd just like to say that the task force is not intended to duplicate existing initiatives, as Caroline pointed out in her intervention earlier, but to build on these existing work. And here we find several important points of convergence with the GCP call to action. I'd particularly like to single out the questions related to market transparency. We heard about the roaster and retailer reporting on purchases of sustainable coffee. And we also talked about just now about the Delta project and standardized indicators. And another important area of work is in the question of market policies and institutions. And here we are talking about the appropriate regulation of futures markets and something that is very close to the work of the GCP, the work of national platforms to create an enabling environment. During the present meeting, there were two points that were raised that I think are interesting and that we could develop further. I've already mentioned the question of futures markets, and you were talking about setting up a working group. Maybe, I don't know if you allow observers or people from outside to participate, but that might be an interesting area of collaboration. And also, I think the question of a definition of what constitutes sustainable coffee. I've been talking to these Sherpas in preparatory meetings over the last couple of weeks, and several of them have brought up the need to have a definition of what constitutes sustainable coffee. So I will close there, but just to say that I think we have done quite a bit together, but there's much, much, much more that we can do. And I look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jose, for your overview and a very appreciated perspective on what you called a special partnership. So we feel alike. It's quite special to be having this specific partnership with the International Coffee Organization. And we do look forward to the next steps, as you mentioned, in the public-private task force, and then beyond the ongoing work that you have been mentioning. I would like to hand over to Carlos Brando, who is our chair, the chair of the board of directors of the organization, to share with all of you, our members, a few reflections, a few highlights. Over to you, Carlos.
So good morning, afternoon, or evening again to all participants. It's indeed very good to be here with all of you at these difficult times. I'm especially happy because we've been the same number of participants, attendees from the beginning to this stage, and we're approaching the end of our webinar, which really indicates a lot of interest and a lot of attention. And a lot of information has been shared with all of you participants. I would like to thank you, the GCP members, for your continued support and collaboration. We would not be here now without you. I'm also happy that our call to action is moving forwards. We had great reports, statements. Thank you very much for all who reported on what we have been doing. I believe that at these COVID-19 times, GCP becomes even more important for both coffee producing countries and all the companies and institutions that want to support coffee growers in the supply chain in these producing countries. No matter what new normal is going to be, we already know that coffee growers and even the supply chain will be in a worse situation than before. So they will demand more assistance, more help. And we have to understand that GCP has developed or is developing national sustainability platforms and coffee sustainability curricula that are the means to effective action. Now, more than ever, this structure can help define sustainability gaps, and there are going to be new ones, and very important, to leverage local resources to address these gaps. And the way we are now addressing these gaps is with the help of collective action initiatives, some of which have been described in this webinar. As you know, together, platforms, curricula, initiatives are activating stakeholders in producing countries, in mobilizing government, the private sector, and civil society. This is even more important than ever at this crisis times. We should, and this is the reflection time, we should then reflect on how we can act together more intensely. How can we attract more companies to support the collective action networks, the ones on the table and new ones to come? And at the bottom line, dear members, and very importantly, how can we attract more GCP members? Please talk to your colleagues everywhere. The more we are, the more intensely we can act. And this is in all of our hands to get more members to participate. And I would really appreciate if within your own sector and even outside it, you could try to work with people to try to convince them to join GCP. On the other hand, talking to yourselves, our members, I want to encourage members to participate, more members, in our roster retailer reporting and other call to action items. I would like to have more members to supporting the collective action initiatives that are being and will be developed. And also, I repeat, to recommend GCP membership to your coffee sector colleagues. It's now really the time to reflect on how to recommit to acting together. And since this pandemic started in China, why not use a Chinese concept that crises bring opportunities? And we have to think out of the box. Let's reflect and what can we do differently on a practical side? What can we as members do to support GCP at this difficult COVID-19 times? I believe there will be a lot of funding coming to producing countries, especially the ones that are being more affected by the pandemic. But we have to be smart to see how we can channel those funds to coffee growers and to our causes. Because perhaps the first idea will be to help urban areas where the crisis is more evident. But it's going to hurt producers and the supply chain. And we have to see how we can leverage funding that's likely to become available in producing and consuming countries to address the negative impacts of the crisis in order to benefit our GCP sustainability cause, which is indeed coffee growers and supply chain.
Right, thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos. This was really an excellent summary in this reflection modus that the pandemic is kind of forcing all of us into. While, as Juan Esteban also said, the pandemic is just another challenge over the structural issues that we've been looking at and we've been starting to work on in addressing in an organized way, in a more organized way in the sector. So to our members who have been listening, thinking with us, probably you have some ideas, you have some questions, please do feel free to digest this information. We will send you the slides and the recording. Please do feel free to reach out to your secretariat on what you've heard, what you're more interested in finding out, because we have been only able to present some highlights here in this webinar. And also on what our chair has been putting out there as big questions to be addressed in the next few months and years. So use your GCP organization that is quite unique, as Mary you have said, and let's do more. Let's roll up the sleeves and let's act more together. It's a good way to propel our sector towards the thriving and sustainable sector vision that we all share, but there is a lot to be done. I invite you to participate in the upcoming webinars and engagement opportunities, many of them virtual. There is one happening on GCP measurement in action where you will find out much more in detail what is already happening in terms of measuring sustainability progress concretely. That's in August. We invite you as well to think along in a more strategic way about GCP's theory of change that we've been working on to make it even better in September. And then very important, and I mentioned that at the very beginning of this webinar, the virtual GCP membership assembly is only close to half a year away. We are very much looking forward to seeing you all, and particularly inviting the new members who have joined since then to reflect, receive the report back, and very importantly, take some of those big questions that Carlos and some of our speakers pointed out today and put that into action, because only by acting together we can really achieve our shared sustainable vision of thriving coffee communities, farmer that are prosperous, and that coffee business can continue by preserving nature as well. So we are looking forward to seeing you. Please do stay healthy and safe. And as the team has been working so hard from home office, we hope to be able to report back to you in a very engaging, very nice way on even more action in the next occasion. Let's act together, and we are actually acting together for a bright coffee future. Thank you, everybody, and have a good morning, afternoon, and evening everywhere in the coffee world.